Hi, I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and this is the video version of my article on what to tell your anxious and panicky clients about their anxiety. And this video is an approximation of the article, so it won't be exactly the same word for word. Now, Benjamin Franklin apparently said, "Do not anticipate trouble or worry about what may never happen. Keep in the sunlight." We're most of us sometimes prone to misuse our imaginations to scare ourselves with about the future. Anyway, a recent client of mine, I'll call Rachel, told me despairingly that people just didn't understand how bad it felt for her when she panicked. And she wept as she spoke of the horrible anxiety she'd suffered for years. Sometimes her anxiety boiled over into the worst panic attacks imaginable, as she put it. And she said, people say, yeah, I used to have panic attacks too, but they still don't seem to understand how bad it is for me, she said. How I just can't do anything when panic comes on. And she miserably described all the usual characteristics of panic, which were shortness of breath, dry mouth, sweaty palms, racing pulse, feeling like she might be sick or empty her gut contents in other ways, as she put it, shaking, feeling stuck to the spot but wanting to escape, feeling like her thoughts are going too fast or that she can't think at all, feeling like she's going to die or go mad or humiliate herself. And Rachel was right. It can be hard to believe that anyone else could possibly know what it's like to experience the horror of utter panic when everyone else around seems calm and normal. And of course, generalized anxiety, a sense of foreboding and uncomfortable tension, is very common. And so-called normal people do experience panic disorder. But when you're the one experiencing it, it can feel really isolating, as though no one else could possibly feel as bad as you do. Now, I taught Rachel several ways to stop panic attacks, but there were some important things I really wanted her to know about anxiety and panic, because knowledge is power. And this might be really valuable for your clients too. So how can we psychoeducate our clients when it comes to anxiety and panic disorder? And when we do this, then we also help to reframe the panic and anxiety so that it feels less threatening. Well, firstly, we can reassure them that normal people do experience fear and panic. In fact, it's normal to feel panic. Human reactions are so often labeled as disorders that our clients can forget that anxiety and panic are, in fact, evolutionary tools designed to save us from danger. Yet, like any tool, they can be misapplied, or even give the illusion of controlling us. I reassured Rachel that anxiety isn't an illness or disease in itself. Like, say, with appetite for food, it's only a problem when it becomes uncontrolled and excessive. And although countless people who I've treated for trauma, panic attacks and worry now consider themselves cured, the capacity for anxiety needs to be always available to us. Anxiety is our property and our birthright, and we might genuinely need it someday. So Rachel had been feeling like a weirdo, as she put it, for being so anxious. So she was reassured as well as intrigued when I told her about research showing that anxious people tend to be safer during real emergencies, as they tend to flee the soonest, even before the real emergency gets going. So some anxiety, when it's needed, is vital, and sometimes we need to go all the way into panic. So I suggested to Rachel, we don't cure anxiety and panic, we align it. Just as we don't want to totally disable an oversensitive car alarm, we want to reset it so it only goes off when it really needs to. And this made the therapeutic progress feel much easier, less daunting for Rachel. She now felt she wasn't curing a disorder, but simply aligning a natural response. We can, more specifically, help normalize other characteristics. I much prefer the word characteristics to symptoms of panic and anxiety. So next we can describe the freeze response as well as the fight or flight. So Rachel, like most clients, understood the fight or flight response. Terror, panic, or even mild anxiety are all different parts of the same continuum. When we reach the far end of anxiety and we go into panic, we can sometimes feel as if we've gone into fight or flight. But Rachel was a bit confused at this point. She said, well, sometimes I feel like it's not fight or flight, but like I'm in a sort of stuck or frozen to the spot state. And I explored with Rachel the fact that before we enter the fight or flight response, we freeze. Often this is just for milliseconds, but here's the thing. If we feel inescapably trapped, we may find that our energy shuts down and we just stay in freeze mode. Take a squirrel on a garden fence, for example. If it becomes aware that you, a possible predator, are observing it, it might freeze. But then, if you approach it, it will come out of this frozen state and scamper away. It's gone from freeze to flight. And this made perfect sense to Rachel, especially when I suggested that many bigger predators detect their prey largely through the motion of their prey. When a tiger comes your way, freezing may make you harder to spot, which hopefully means it will move on, giving you a chance to vamoosh really fast. So this freezing before fight or flight is natural and was once vital for survival purposes, or still is on occasion. But we humans sometimes freeze when we wrongly feel trapped or helpless. For example, many depressed people feel stuck as though they can't act or help themselves, even when perhaps in reality they could. This is what we call learned helplessness, a sort of being stuck in the freeze response. I also described other characteristics of high anxiety and panic. After taking client information, we can describe why the client has been having those symptoms. Fast breathing, racing heart, sweaty palms, shaking, racing thoughts, dodgy bowels. These were the horrendous symptoms of Rachel's 6-month-long ordeal of panic and high anxiety. And of course, these experiences can be scary in themselves and make us fear the panic, which of course feeds into it even more, like a vicious cycle. So I conversationally described the adaptive purpose of the very symptoms Rachel had described. So fast breathing and racing heart happen in anticipation of exercise. That's part of the exercise response, running or fighting. Our bodies prepare us to exercise before we actually begin to exercise. How cool is that? If heavy exercise is actually needed, of course. Sweaty palms, once dried, improve our grip so we can better climb into trees for safety. Shaking happens when we try to make ourselves stay in one place when we're afraid. Your body is trying to both go and stay at the same time now, so it shakes. The larger muscles also get primed for action, so that finer muscle movement may be harder because all the blood's going into the big muscles. Tying your shoelaces when you're terrified may feel impossible. Thoughts race because in true emergencies we really need to think fast and also simplistically, run or fight, all or nothing. Our thinking needs to race along with our physical reaction. Even the desire to defecate or vomit, I suggested, unappetizingly, may have an adaptive function in potentially making us less appetizing to large predators to eat. After all, I told Rachel, all the while maintaining eye contact with her, what predator wants to consume a morsel covered in sick or poop? And she actually laughed at that point. Rachel reported feeling less afraid of her symptoms after what had been, for her, an illuminating conversation. These were no longer symptoms of a disorder, but adaptive characteristics potentially vital in their place, simply going off at the wrong times and far too frequently. And we can think of it like this: fear hates to be laughed at. It likes to be taken seriously. And of course, this normalizing of the characteristics of anxiety and panic was just a small part of my work with Rachel, but she did find that this new way of looking at her symptoms, instead as adaptive characteristics, helped her fear the fear much less and even laugh a little bit. Rachel told me that she had laughed at a situation at work in which her hands started to feel a little sweaty and her tummy started feeling loose. And she said, "I remembered what you'd said about hands drying to help us climb from predators up trees, and a loose tummy preparing to make us less appetizing for predators. And I thought, well, I don't really need to be doing that in this meeting." And the fear just kind of went away. Part of her was now outside of the fear. Now, for Rachel, reaching that point was also thanks to the other work that we'd done together, but helping our clients understand what they've been experiencing and why can be extremely reassuring for many people. Rachel quickly learned to switch off panic when it wasn't needed, which was nearly all the time. She started to relax more, and because of that, felt not just mentally, but also physically healthier. Her sleep improved too. But best of all, she told me during her final session that she now felt in control of her life and free to focus on all the things that she values.